Assalamualaikum everyone, welcome back, and we will be discussing another chapter for O-level maths, which is going to be number sequences and patterns. अब सबसे पहले, what exactly is a number sequence? A number sequence is basically a list of numbers that follow a certain pattern or a certain rule. For example, if you look at this list of numbers, you will be very quick to notice that this list follows a certain pattern or a certain rule. अब वो pattern और rule है क्या? You can see that every next number you are adding 2 to the previous number to get every next number. So 1 plus 2 is going to equal to 3, 3 plus 2 is going to equal to 5, 5 plus 2 7, 7 plus 2 9, and so on. So there is a pattern that this list follows, hence this whole list is basically a number sequence. इस पूरी लिस्ट को हम एक नंबर सीक्वेंस कहेंगे एंड इसकी जो इंडिविजुअल टर्म्स हैं, सो 1 3 5, दीज आर बेसिकली द टर्म्स ऑफ द सीक्वेंस. ठीक है, एंड वन मोर थिंग बिफोर आई मूव ऑन, दिस इज द फर्स्ट टर्म of the sequence, 3 is going to be the second term, 5 is going to be the third term, and so on. ठीक है, तो this is basically the term number 1 2 3 and so on. So this whole, I repeat, this whole list is a number sequence. इस लिस्ट की या इस सीक्वेंस की जो इंडिविजुअल टर्म्स है वो उस सीक्वेंस की टर्म्स है, एंड जिस पोजिशन पे इन द सीक्वेंस ये टर्म्स आती हैं वो टर्म नंबर है. सो 1, टर्म नंबर फॉर 1 इज़ गोइंग टू बी द फर्स्ट टर्म और 1. 3 का टर्म नंबर क्या होगा? 2, बिकॉज इट्स द सेकेंड टर्म इन द सीक्वेंस. 5 का टर्म नंबर क्या होगा? 3, एंड सो ऑन. यूजली रिप्रेजेंट द टर्म नंबर बाय द वेरिएबल n. सो 1 पे n इज इक्वल्स टू 1 हो जाएगा, 3 पे n is equals to 2, 5 पे n is equals to 3, and so on. This n is basically the term number. किस नंबर पे या किस पोजीशन पे आपकी ये वाली टर्म आपके सीक्वेंस में आती है. Now, like we said, that a sequence is basically a list of numbers that follow a pattern or a rule. इसमें हमारा rule क्या है? We're adding plus 2 to every next term. So the term to term rule in this case is basically adding plus 2. Term to term rule होता क्या है? Term to term rule is basically the rule of a sequence that describes how to get from one term to the next term. Like for example, यहाँ पर आप 1 पे हो, term to term rule क्या होगा? Add 2. So to get from your first term, which is 1, to the next term 3, you have to add 2, and so on. So the term to term rule in this example is plus 2 or add 2. Let's do another example on the term to term rule before I move on. What are the next 4 terms of a sequence? If the first 2 terms are 2 and 4, so the first 2 terms are 2 and 4. यहाँ पर n क्या होगा? n is equals to 1. यहाँ पर n क्या होगा? n is equals to 2. The first term is 2, so n is equals to 1. The second term is 4, so n is equals to 2 is going to be at 4. You have to calculate the next 4 terms of this sequence. अगर आपका term to term rule है, multiplying the 2 preceding terms to get to the next term. अब हमारी n is equals to 3 is going to be the next term, right? So n is equals to 3 पे हमारी next term आ जाएगी, और next term का रूल क्या है? आपने पिछली दोनों terms को आपस में multiply करना है. So 2 into 4 is 8. So my next term is going to be 8. फिर n is equals to 4 पे it's going to be 8 into 4. 8 into 4 is 24. So my next term is 24, and then you can calculate the other 2 terms by multiplying 24 and 8, which is 192, and 192 into 24, which is 4608. तो यहाँ पर आपका this is going to be your 5th term and this is going to be your 6th term. ठीक है, आपकी जो 6th term है at n is equals to 6, your term is 4602. I'm emphasizing on this because this is one of the biggest confusions that students have कि nth term और n में क्या फ़र्क है? nth term is basically the term of that sequence that you get at that particular number or that particular position in the sequence. So n is equals to 6 पे जो आपकी term आएगी वो 4602 आएगी. Now that we've talked about what a number sequence is and you know the basics of a sequence, I want to talk about the types of sequence that we will be discussing in this chapter. So we will basically be discussing 4 types of sequences, which are going to be arithmetic sequences, quadratic sequences, cubic and triangle number sequences. Arithmetic को आप linear भी कहते हो, linear sequences भी कहते हो, and why we say it, I'm going to tell you shortly. Now we'll be discussing arithmetic sequences in a little more detail. Like I said, they are also called linear sequences. ठीक है, सबसे पहले arithmetic या linear sequences होते क्या हैं? They are basically sequences which have a constant difference between their terms. What do I mean by that? It is a sequence in which the term to term rule is to add or subtract the same number each time. अगर आपका term to term rule ये है तो the sequence is an arithmetic sequence. For example, the sequence that we talked about previously, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13 is an example of an arithmetic sequence. How do I know it's an arithmetic sequence? You can see that I am continuously adding the same number to the term to get to my next term. So I am adding the same number each time to get to the next term. Hence, this is an example of an arithmetic sequence. Another example can be this sequence over here. ठीक है, इसमें क्या हो रहा है? इसमें हर अगली term is 5 less than the previous term. So you are subtracting 5 from each term to get to the next term. This is also an arithmetic sequence. How? Because you're subtracting the same number each time to get to the arithmetic sequence. Now let's say this is sequence 1. ठीक है, and this is sequence 2, to be able to give a good reference in the coming part. अब आपके पास, let's say I want you to calculate the next 3 terms of the sequence. ठीक है, तो अभी आपके पास कितनी terms हैं? आपके पास 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 terms है. I want to calculate the next 3 terms. Next 3 terms कैसे आएंगी? I will, let's move this here. So I will basically add another 2 to get to 15. ये अगली term आ गई. उससे अगली मैं दोबारा 2 ऐड कर दूंगी to get to 17. And then I'll add 2 again to get to 19. So the next 3 terms are 15, 17, 19. इसी तरह इसकी next 3 terms क्या हो जाएंगी? I will subtract 5 again, which is going to equal to minus 10. I will subtract 5 again to get to minus 15, and I will subtract 5 again to get to minus 20. ठीक है, तो the next 3 terms for this are 5, 15, 17 and 19, and for this minus 10, minus 15, minus 20. अब अगर तो मैंने सिर्फ first 10 terms निकाल लिए, like in this case I have 10 terms, so even if the first 15 terms, it's very easy for me to calculate it. But now let's say I want you to calculate the 50th term of the sequence. So for the sequence 1, I want to calculate the 50th term of this sequence. What would you do? Would you start, like for example, यहाँ पर n1 है, this is your first term, this is your second term, this is your 10th term. So would you calculate all the 40 terms, all the next 40 terms to get to the 50th term? How long do you think that would take? Similarly, let's say I want you to calculate the 200th term for sequence 2. अब आप बैठ के 200 times तो हर term नहीं निकालेंगे, which is why for arithmetic sequences there is a formula that you can use to calculate the nth term of a sequence, to calculate a term at a particular position in the sequence, and that formula is the nth term will equal to a plus n minus 1 into d. अब a क्या है? a is the first term of a sequence, जहाँ से आपका sequence start हो रहा है. d क्या है? d is the common difference. It's the number that you are adding or subtracting each time to get to the next term. N क्या है? N is the term number that you want to calculate. And nth term is basically the term of the sequence you want to calculate. ठीक है, for example, अब you want to calculate the 50th term of sequence 1. Sequence 1 आपके पास कौन सा है? It's this sequence over here. तो 50th term मैंने निकालनी है. I'm going to use this formula. अब इस formula में A for sequence 1 क्या हो जाएगा? A is the first term. So the first term of the sequence is 1. You can see that the sequence starts from the term 1. So A आपके पास in this case क्या हो जाएगा? A is equals to 1. N क्या है? N is basically the term number. It's not the term itself. So if you want to calculate the 50th term, that means the term number that you want to calculate is 50. आपकी 50th position पे कौन सी टर्म आती है आपने वो कैलकुलेट करनी है. तो n इज़ बेसिकली द टर्म और द पोजिशन ऑफ द टर्म इन द सीक्वेंस. इन दिस केस इट्स गोइंग टू बी 50. ठीक है, वन ऑफ द बिगेस्ट कन्फ्यूजन्स इज़ n और nth टर्म में. तो n इज़ बेसिकली द टर्म नंबर. आपने 50th टर्म निकालनी है तो n इज़ इक्वल्स टू 50 हो जाएगा. और d क्या होगा? टू कैलकुलेट d व्हाट यू डू इज़ ऑलवेज नेक्स्ट टर्म माइनस the previous term to calculate d. So आप कोई भी दो टर्म्स उठा लें अपने सीक्वेंस से. लेट्स से मैं 7 और 9 उठा लेती हूँ. मैंने d निकालना है तो मैं अगली टर्म विच इज़ 9 इन दिस केस माइनस पिछली टर्म करूँगी विच इज़ 7. सो आई विल डू 9 माइनस 7 टू गेट d. d हमारे पास क्या आ जाएगा? +2. Now that I have everything, I want to calculate the 50th term. तो using this formula ये क्या हो जाएगा? 50th term is equal to a, which we said is 1, plus n minus 1. n क्या था? 50. So 50 minus 1 into the common difference d, which is equal to 2. ये आपके पास हो जाएगा 1 plus 49 into 2, which equals to 99. So the 50th term in this sequence is going to be 99. I hope this is clear, and if it is, try doing another question on your own. You want to calculate the 70th term of the sequence 2. Sequence 2 आपके पास ये है. Pause the video, try to do it, and I will reveal the answer shortly. If your answer was minus 325, you were correct. कैसे minus 325 है? A, which was the first term, is going to be 20. You can see over here. D is going to be -5. D कैसे? आप कोई भी दो टर्म्स निकाल लें. आप 10 minus 15 करें, -5 आ जाएगा. And the term number was 70 because you wanted to calculate the 70th term. And when you put this back in this formula over here, you get -325 as your answer.